Hi, I'm Keith Burchnall of Tonecrafter Piano Tuning. I have a lot of clients that ask about what to look for in a used piano, or they want to engage me to go and look at a used piano. It's probably best if the customer can at least perform some basic examinations themselves on pianos that they're interested in buying. So I'm just going to give you a very brief rundown on what sorts of things to look at. So this piano is probably approximately 100 years old or a bit more. It's a Heinzmann made in Toronto, Canada. Very well-made piano, to be sure. This one certainly has stood the test of time. So most any piano has a lid. The first thing you have to do is open the lid. Make sure that the hinges are secure, that it's not going to fall off on you. So make sure there's hinge pins and all that. Now this piano was actually tuned not too long ago, so we're not too concerned about that part of it. But I'll have another feature about what to look for as far as tuning goes. So you open the lid, and then if you look inside, here you should get the owner of the piano and get their permission. There'll be various catches that need to be undone so you can get the front off. You can do some very perfunctory examination by looking inside, but in this case we'll take the front off. So here you want to be very careful. You might want an extra person. So I pull that ahead a little bit. Most pianos are similar to this. Some of the shorter pianos, like maybe 36 inches tall, some of them, especially Wurlitzers, they have something that's a bit more like the hood of a car. There's not really a panel like this, but the lid and the front lift up as a unit. So just have a good look at it first. Now, so here's the interior of the piano. So this entire assembly here is called the action. So here we've got hammers and back catches and whippings and so forth. I won't get too much into the details of what's here. So one of the first things I listen for is the bass of the piano. You can actually do this without even taking the piano apart. Now, if you hear that tone, I hope the audio is reasonably good here, but it's got a nice long sustain. The tone lasts for a good time when you first play it. It's got nice overtones. That one's somewhat brighter yet. So that's still quite good sound there. You don't want to hear buzzes, groans, rattles, that sort of thing. That's not really a very good sign. Now, what often happens with pianos this old is the bass strings will start to go dead, and in which case you will hear more of that kind of a sound. It's a very dull, tubby sound. Sometimes cleaning will help them, but to be quite frank, I've done it on a number of pianos, and the improvement was really not that appreciable. So if you really hear a dull thud like that, that's really not a very good sound. For example, these ones are somewhat duller sounding than those. You can see these have a copper winding, and those have steel. So there's quite a difference in the tone. So at this point in time, the copper strings are quite a bit brighter than the steel wrapped. So once again, if you hear a really dull thud, that's not a good sign, because it can be a very expensive fix to have to replace those strings. And so I just work my way up the piano, start the low A, put the pedal down too if you wish. Listen for the sound. Still pretty good sound there. Good sustain. You want to hear a nice long sustain, not have the tone die very quickly. That's still pretty good. That's still a nice, good, clear sound. And so forth. You can go right up to the top A or C. Now that really speaks quite well. That's a really good C for an old piano like that. Now, so the bass strings are okay. The rest of it sounds not too bad. As I said, the piano was tuned not too long ago, about a month or so. Now, I don't know if you folks have a pitch pipe or a tuning fork. It would be a good idea if you did have some kind of a thing like that to check the pitch on the piano. So mostly nowadays we use this A above middle C to check the pitch of the piano. So if you play that note and you compare it to your pitch pipe or tuning fork, and you find your pitch pipe or tuning fork sounds like that, but the piano, when you play the A, if it sounds like that, that's a bad sign. If it's down that far, that's really bad, and if it's anything more than that, it's terrible. The worst piano I ever ran into, when I played this A above middle C, I actually heard middle C. That was one for the record books. I've never heard a piano that bad before or since. That was an old English so-called birdcage piano. Okay, now if you can come a little closer here. Now the light here is not that good, but if you look down on these felt hammers, you'll be able to see hopefully some grooves from the wires hitting the strings. Now if the grooves are really deep, that's not a very good a good sign. That means there's quite a bit of wear, particularly when you look up here. You find where there's not quite so much felt on the hammers, that if the grooves are really deep, there's not much chance to recondition them. Recondition would be to take that hammer and remove the grooves, but try to keep that hammer still nice and rounded like that, and have this striking point so it's still perpendicular to the sides. And up in this area though, if you have to remove too much felt, then you can get very close to this wooden molding, and that's not very good. Then you would get quite a woody tone. So generally in an old piano like this, there's quite a bit of felt left in the bass, but as you go up the scale there's less and less felt, until finally you don't want to actually have bare wood being exposed when you get into that area. So if the hammer's in really bad shape, that's not that good. By bad shape I mean if it would swallow a really good chunk of your fingernail, that's not so good. Another thing too is when you play a moderately hard blow, if you see that hammer really shudder, wiggle back and forth when it hits the string, that kind of indicates that the grooves are quite deep. And the deeper they are, then when it does that wiggling, that shuddering, that means that it starts to wear out where the hammer swivels at the bottom. That's a very expensive fix too. So if you find that in the course of their traveling to the string that the hammers are really wobbling around, that's not a very good sign. Now this piano is quite old, but those are still really nice and tight. A lot of these old pianos, they've got very good actions. This one has got what's called a continuous brass rail, which is quite a lot better than the wooden flanges that you would see on modern pianos. There's a lot of pianos built nowadays, I think after 100 years of use, that there's no way that they would still be that solid. So that's really quite excellent there. And then too, when you're looking down on the hammers, you can look at the grooves and you can see how well everything lined up in the first place. For example, if you only see 2 grooves in a hammer and there's 3 strings, that means that the hammer is too far one way or the other, so it's not even hitting all 3 strings at once. So if you see that kind of thing, that's an indication of sloppy workmanship. In a good quality piano, you shouldn't really be seeing that sort of thing. Now the tuning pins, it's kind of hard to tell whether they're tight or not, other than just checking the overall tuning. That's probably a test that's best left for a tuner. You know, if you've had a look at a piano and you decide you're maybe considering buying it and you want a little more information, then you should probably get a technician in to check the tuning of the piano. Make sure the tuning pins are okay. So the real basic elements of the piano are the tuning pins and the strings. You want to make sure those are in good condition because those are expensive fix. The hammer and the action, you want to make sure that those aren't in too bad shape because those are also quite expensive. The keys. Now this piano is quite exceptional. It has original ivory keys and there's barely a chip on them. There's a very tiny one right there. That's very desirable indeed. Ivory is so much nicer than plastic. Most any piano you buy nowadays, new piano, has plastic key tops. Now you can distinguish ivory from plastic because when you look at it from the side, it has a pattern to it similar to a fingerprint, whereas plastic is just plastic. There's no feature on it whatsoever. And also on a good old piano, often the sharps are made of ebony. That means that there wouldn't be any bald spots or spots where the original wood is showing through as a different color from the dye that they would have used. It's all, you know, it's black all the way throughout. So that's also a nice thing to have.